The meaning of life is just to be alive. It is so plain and so obvious and so simple, yet everybody rushes around in a great panic, as if it were necessary to achieve something beyond themselves. Now, have you noticed something peculiar? Something rather strange happens when a person awakens, when they suddenly see through the veil of social conditioning, the endless race for achievement, the games of approval, money and image. You begin to notice that the things which once fascinated you, those hobbies, those diversions, those endless pastimes, they suddenly lose their grip. What once absorbed you so deeply now feels strangely flat, and you ask yourself, why am I no longer interested? Why does my old passion feel so hollow? The truth is that awakening has a way of turning the spotlight back upon life itself. See, most of us take up hobbies for a very good reason, to escape. We knit, we paint, we collect stamps, we play the guitar, we scroll endlessly through glowing screens, all as a way of filling the silence. Because the silence, if you are not yet awake, is unbearable. It feels empty, it feels like death, and so you must busy yourself, distract yourself, entertain yourself. But then one day, you awaken, even if just for a fleeting moment. You see that the silence is not empty at all. It is full of being, full of presence, full of you. And suddenly all those hobbies you once used to fight the silence are no longer needed. Now don't mistake me. I am not saying there is anything wrong with hobbies. To paint, to play, to carve wood, to strum strings. These are beautiful expressions of life. But the question is not about the hobby itself. It is about the motive. Were you painting because you loved the paint, the brush, the colors, dancing? Or were you painting because you couldn't bear the void of an unoccupied evening? Were you strumming the guitar because sound and silence were embracing through your fingers? Or were you strumming because you needed to drown out the fear of being alone? You see the difference? When awakening comes, the artificial motive collapses, and so naturally, many hobbies collapse with it. It's a curious paradox. You may think, awakening should make life more colorful, more vibrant. Shouldn't I love my hobbies even more? But consider this. When you taste the very essence of being, when you drink directly from the well of existence, the little puddles no longer quench your thirst. Imagine a man who all his life drank from plastic cups filled with lukewarm water. He cherished those cups, he collected them, he polished them. They were his treasure. But one day he comes upon a mountain spring, cold, pure, alive. Do you think he will go back to polishing plastic cups? Of course not. He has found the source. And so it is with hobbies. They were your cups, but awakening is the spring. Now there is a danger here, a subtle trap. Some people, upon awakening, begin to despise their old hobbies. They say, these things are trivial, meaningless. I am beyond all that. But you see, that is just another ego trick. That is pride dressing up in spiritual robes. Because if you truly awaken, you don't need to despise your hobbies. You simply see them for what they are. You may still play the guitar, but now you strum, not to escape the silence, but to celebrate it. You may still paint, but now each brushstroke is not a distraction from life. It is life. The hobby is no longer a necessity. It becomes a play. You see, the real reason you lost interest in your hobbies is not because you are broken. It is because you are whole. The hobbies once served as bandages, but the wound has closed. The hobbies once served as masks, but the face has been revealed. The hobbies once served as entertainment, but now life itself entertains. And so you sit quietly, perhaps drinking a cup of tea, and in that moment you realize this is it. This is the play. As I once said, this is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize it is play. When you awaken, you no longer need hobbies to simulate play, for life itself becomes the great hobby. But then another question arises. If hobbies fall away, if old passions dissolve, what then? Does life become dull, barren, monotonous? Not at all. In fact, it becomes richer than ever, because you are no longer doing something merely for the sake of filling time. You are doing it because the doing is its own reward. You may walk without needing a destination. You may sing without needing an audience. You may sit by the river without needing to fish. This is when life becomes truly alive. So if you've lost interest in your hobbies after awakening, don't panic. Don't think something has gone wrong. On the contrary, it means something has gone wonderfully right. You have seen through the game. You have tasted the spring, and the plastic cups no longer hold your attention. The trick now is not to cling to the past, nor to condemn it, but to enter more fully into the present. For here, in the simple fact of being alive, not doing, not escaping, not distracting, but simply being, you will find the greatest hobby of all, the hobby of being human. And that is where we begin. But of course, the story does not end here, because after awakening, once the old hobbies fall away, a deeper challenge arises. What do you do with this vast space of freedom? How do you live when the usual distractions no longer satisfy? Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. When the old hobbies dissolve, when the diversions of yesterday no longer hold you, there arises a strange moment, a gap. It feels like standing in a room after the furniture has been removed. For years, the chairs, the tables, the bookshelves filled the space, and now they are gone. And you say to yourself, what am I supposed to do here? Sit on the floor. This is the first taste of the spaciousness awakening brings. And many people mistake it for emptiness, for loss. But the real invitation is to see that the room is not empty at all. It is full, full of air, full of light, full of possibility. The tragedy of our culture is that we are trained from childhood to think that unless we are busy, unless we are entertained, unless we are achieving something, we are wasting time. You see, this is why you panic when the hobbies fall away. You have been conditioned to believe that life must always be filled. But the awakened man or woman discovers the opposite. It is in the unfilled, the unoccupied, the unplanned moments that life reveals itself most intimately. You could say that awakening is learning to sit comfortably in an empty room and discovering that the room sings. Now notice something curious. Once you let the emptiness breathe, new movements appear on their own. When you no longer chase a hobby to fill time, a hobby may return, but it returns differently. You may suddenly feel like sketching again, but this time the sketch is not a desperate act of self-definition. It is simply the hand playing with the pencil. You may feel like playing the guitar again, but now the music is not performed for praise or distraction. It is simply sound unfolding. And if no hobby comes at all, that is fine too, because you no longer measure your life by what you do. You measure it by how awake you are while doing it. Let me give you an image. Imagine a man who for years ran every morning on a treadmill in his basement. He sweated, he panted, he measured his miles. But one day he walks out into the forest, and for the first time he runs simply because the path is calling him. Do you see the difference? One is exercise for the sake of burning calories. The other is movement for the sake of movement. That is what awakening does. It takes the treadmill of hobbies, the forced mechanical, repetitive doing, and replaces it with a spontaneous dance. But of course, this newfound freedom is not without its challenge. You may feel restless, because the mind, still tethered to old habits, whispers, shouldn't you be doing something? Shouldn't you pick up that old project again? Shouldn't you keep yourself occupied? And here, the practice is patience. Do not rush to fill the space. Do not decorate the empty room too quickly. Let the silence teach you its music. For as I once said, muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone. In the same way, your life after awakening is clarified not by rushing to replace hobbies, but by allowing the spaciousness to reveal what it already holds. Another paradox. You may find that rather than collecting more hobbies, you now begin to simplify. Instead of 10 different distractions, you discover one simple joy that is enough. A walk at sunset, the sound of rain on the roof, a single flower in the garden. And here's the miracle. What seems small is not small at all. The sound of rain contains the whole universe, if you truly listen. When you awaken, you don't need more, you only need this. Now someone might say, but isn't this boring? To live without the drama, the endless stimulation, the constant projects. But that's the trick. Boredom only exists when you are resisting the present moment. If you are fully with the raindrop, Fully with the breath, fully with the sip of tea, boredom vanishes. Life is not dull. It is infinitely rich, infinitely subtle. You discover that a single moment of awareness contains more depth than a lifetime of distraction. So why did you lose interest in your hobbies? Because awakening is a shift from quantity to quality, from distraction to depth, from filling time to inhabiting time, and when you taste this depth, the old shallowness no longer satisfies. Yet this is not the end of the journey. For once the old interests fade, and once the space opens, another question arises. How do you live in the world? How do you move among people who are still chasing, still busy, still filling every silence with noise? This, the art of living after awakening, in a world that has not awakened, is the next great chapter. And it is here that the real dance begins. You are an aperture through which the universe is looking at and exploring itself. Now comes the most delicate part of awakening. Because you see, it's one thing to lose interest in your hobbies, to sit quietly, to discover the richness of silence. That much is personal, private, safe. But sooner or later you must walk out into the world again. And the world is noisy. The world is restless. The world is forever caught in its own drama of chasing, striving, proving. So the question arises, how do you live among others? How do you engage in the marketplace of life when you no longer buy what they are selling? Here is the paradox. Awakening frees you from the game, but it doesn't excuse you from the dance. You no longer need hobbies to define yourself. You no longer need achievements to prove yourself. And yet life still invites you to play. The painter may pick up the brush again, not because he must, but because the colors themselves are irresistible. The musician may return to the piano, not because he seeks applause, but because the keys whisper. The awakened man lives in the world, but is no longer of it. He moves like an actor who knows he is on stage, but plays his role with all the joy in his heart. Let's put it simply. Awakening doesn't strip life of meaning. It strips it of false meaning. And in doing so, it reveals the true meaning. Play. When you awaken, you don't retreat to a cave forever. You laugh, you work, you love, you build, you create. But you do it lightly. You do it as play. Imagine watching children at the beach building sandcastles. They dig, they pile, they decorate. They are completely absorbed. But do they cling to the castle when the tide comes? No. They laugh as it dissolves, because the joy was never in the finished castle. The joy was in the play itself. So it is with life after awakening. You build, you work, you create, but you know it is sand, and therefore you can finally enjoy it. But here's the challenge. The world doesn't understand this. You will meet people who look at you and say, why are you not ambitious anymore? Why don't you care about climbing higher, getting richer, being more? And you will smile, because you know they are still polishing their plastic cups while you have tasted the spring. But do not condemn them. For remember, you too once believed the same. Instead, let your presence be the teaching. Not by preaching, not by correcting, but simply by living lightly. By showing that joy is possible without the endless chase. This is perhaps the greatest gift of awakening. Not that you escape the world, but that you illuminate it. Now let us go deeper. Some of you, after awakening, may feel a loneliness, because suddenly the conversations of ordinary life, the gossip, the small talk, the obsessions, feel shallow. You wonder, where do I belong now? Who do I share this with? This is part of the path. But here is the secret. You do not awaken to separate yourself from others. You awaken to discover that others are not others at all. For when you see clearly, you realize that every person in their striving, their clinging, their hobbies, their distractions, is simply the universe forgetting itself. And you are the universe remembering. You and they are not separate. You are two waves on the same ocean. So what do? You live with compassion. You smile at the frantic man polishing his plastic cup. You share tea with the woman who cannot sit in silence. You do not need to fix them. You only need to embody freedom. And sometimes, without a word, your presence will awaken something in them. Now, there is one more thing. Awakening is not the end. It is not a trophy to be won and put on the shelf. It is the beginning of a new way of living, a way that requires constant openness, Do not cling even to awakening. Do not make it into your new identity. Because the moment you say, I am awakened, I am beyond hobbies, I am beyond this or that, you have already fallen back into the game. Instead, return again and again to the simplicity of this moment. Drink your tea, watch the clouds, play your part, dance your dance. And when life calls you to paint, paint. When it calls you to rest, rest. When it calls you to love, love. So why did you lose interest in your hobbies after awakening? Because awakening is not about hobbies. It is about discovering that life itself is the ultimate art. Every gesture, every word, every breath, this is your masterpiece. And when you live this way, you realize you have not lost your hobbies at all. Life has become your hobby. Existence itself has become your play. This is the real secret of life, to be completely engaged with what you are doing in the here and now. And instead of calling it work, realize it is play. So play, my friends, not as escape, not as distraction, but as the universe, exploring itself through you. For this is why you lost interest in your hobbies, because you found the greatest one of all, the hobby of being.